Here I have Wakili Robin. We are discussing what is happening on the headlines. If you have the Star, the East African Review, or the People Daily, please send me the headlines, and we will be comparing it with what we are seeing on the Daily Nation, the Business Daily, and the Standard. Why Ruto climbed down on new taxes is what I'm reading here on the e-paper version of the Daily Nation. You can get yourself a physical copy at 60 shillings and also an e-version for only 40 Kenyan shillings. Why Ruto climbed down on new taxes, the headline on the Daily Nation. A wave of public outcry and pressure from the opposition has forced the president to step down on a few of those measures or a few of those taxes and levies which were outlined in the finance bill of 2023. It's going to be tabled in Parliament today for a discussion with honourable members of Parliament who we are expecting to act honourably, even if for the past really long time they have not been acting honourably. Will they be taking or will they be doing the right thing this time and listen to the cry of Mwananchi? According to what we are seeing so far, it seems that partially the demands of Mwananchi have been listened to. And I'm going to go through some of those concessions in a short while, discussing them with Wakili Robin, and then see how those changes are going to impact your financial decision making into the coming year of the year that is beginning July of 2023. But first, welcome Wakili to the show.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back, man. How has it been?
It's been well.
You're a busy man this year. We have to begin with that.
No, not by liking. Maybe we can begin with standing in solidarity with my friends from Toy Market in Kibra.
Right.
The traders there are undergoing some big shift. I was in Kibra the other day when you called me a busy man, and we were talking with traders about a program we are implementing called Nairikiti Icons on the proposed Biashara Fund for Nairobi County. So basically what we are asking is we are talking with young people to find out what they would want from Governor Sakaja's pledge and how they would want that implemented and how they would actually use that Biashara Fund to help them in the long term. So it gets very hard when you see just when young people started to start their businesses and then something like what happened in Toy Market happens. So
it's a tragedy.
I will start with
really
being in solidarity with them and saying we are together in this journey. We will still make it through.
Thank you for that. This being a business show, I think it's apt that we begin with standing in solidarity with business people in the country who we are having this program for. Asante sana Wakili for that. Yourself, how are you?
I am very well.
Right.
I have been busy, as you say, but we've been fighting on all corners, fighting for the young people of Nairobi. I may shout out some few people who sent me greetings to you. I have greetings from one Honorable Edwin Deda from Kibra. I have greetings from Musila Junior from Lindi. I have greetings from Habib Omar from Kariobangi. And young people actually coming out and standing in with each other and fighting this journey of youth inclusion and effectiveness in active participation.
Right, that is a very commendable move there, and also greetings to all of those that you've already mentioned. Now, for other people who are also fighting really for the youth and the general public, one, the opposition, but also the public. We've seen a debate unlike any other that has rocked the nation. Last year's or previous year's finance bills have not actually brought this kind of, sensational discussions happening online and offline at the same time. If you ask your mama mboga, if you ask your boda boda rider, who are the bottom up as has been referred to by the Kenya Kwanza government. If you ask all the bottom up, citizens, they will tell you indeed they are aware of what is happening in the nation as regards to the finance bill of 2023. Let me just maybe begin with your general reaction before we get into what has been the developments in the past 1 week. Looking at the propositions in the finance bill, VAT exempt, housing levy, all these discussions have already happened intensely in the past 3 weeks or so. So what were your reactions first of all, and how has that changed so far?
First of all, I'm very glad with the conversation. The last time I was here, I told you that Kenyans are becoming woke and Kenyans are starting to see things that actually affect them. So I'm very glad when we have a conversation as a country about the finance bill. That is a plus to me. But even as we have the conversation, it is okay that we can also tell people the truth. I hear in government, they say that truth and fact are relative. They might be different, but it is okay to tell the people the truth at one point or the other. What I mean by that is by people understanding that the finance bill is government's way of doing business, or government's way of making money to finance a budget. What we call sensitization and people knowing about rising on this price, lowering of this price, is what the government uses to, I would say, control us, because I am not a democracy person. But that much being said, my reaction is we are just doing same rounds, going around on the same thing, because once you reduce something on this side, you have to add somewhere, because the money that they expect to earn has not changed per se.
Right.
It's not like they have reduced the budget; they have only re-strategized on how they will get the money. But at the end of it all, I think once we start to discuss the nitty-gritties, I will oppose some of the things that you have said, or some as have been reported, because I believe it's just a fallacy. We are still passing the same finance bill, if you ask me.
Right. The president and his deputy were very insistent on the fact that this finance bill will be passed as it is. But now we are seeing here, according to what is there on the Daily Nation this morning, a wave of public outcry and mounting pressure from the opposition and various organizations have now forced President William Ruto and the Kenya Kwanza administration to cave in on some of these so-called punitive proposals in the finance bill. And maybe just to go through a few of those concessions inside what President William Ruto has decided. The housing levy reduced from 3% proposition to 1.5%. The digital levy on content creators, which was now proposed at 15% withholding tax, now to 5%. 3, the double VAT on petroleum products from 8% to 16%. That still is there. Increase of rental income from proposed 7.5% back to an upwards of 10%. Is the president listening? What does this inform Kenyans? Should Kenyans feel like they are partially getting their voice heard within the highest ranks?
I believe the question is not is the president listening. The question is, who is the president listening to? Why I say that is because you are reporting quite well there that we have reduced the housing levy from 3% to 1.5%. That is actually a lie. Why I call it a lie is because the housing levy was supposed to be given 1.5% for by the employee and 1.5% by the employer. So what did the employers do? What you're calling mounting pressure. The employers said that if we have to chuck out 1.5% to help in this housing levy, we will have to let go of some stuff and retrench stuff, because we cannot manage to be paying that much for people. So what Kenya Kwanza government has done is removed the part where the employee does a 1.5, the employer does a 1.5% contribution to your housing levy, but the 1.5% done by the employee is still there. So in actual sense, the president is listening to your employer, not listening to you, the employee. So it's the question I still remain on is who is he listening to? Because again, you go to we have reduced for digital content, they have increased for export levy from 10% to 17%. They're still recovering what they are losing, but it depends on who now is going to be affected. Now, the people in the export industry, so we have, like, macadamia nuts went from 200 Kenya shillings per kilo to 20 Kenya shillings per kilo, and our biggest market was in export. And now you have increased the export duty to 17%. It's maybe because you think the export people can't talk that much like the digital content people, because they are on Twitter attacking you every day. But at the end, we are still passing the same finance bill. I keep insisting.
Whether we like it or not, we are still passing the same finance bill. The Standard actually puts it really well. I don't know if you can get us the headline there, that President William Ruto is taking with one hand and giving back with the other. Listening to employers on one hand and taking it back from the employees on the other hand. Maybe you can get it from you, Robin, there.
Yes, actually, from the Standard, I note that they say that the betting tax was proposed as 20, goes down to 12.5%. The insurance stays the same. Income tax goes from 32 to 35. Export levy goes from 10 to 17. Mobile transfer go down from 15 to 12. And they say that the president has agreed to amend some of the controversial taxes by reducing the percentage and increasing the amount on other sides, and retaining some of the VAT, like the petrol, roads, and the one for insurance. I still can't understand why they would want to tax. I'm finding it hard to explain to Kenyans that once you go out there and you get into an accident and you have an insurance cover, and the insurance people decide to compensate you for your
accident,
your injury, then the government will tax you for that. I still don't. I find it hard to explain. Are they taxing how you being injured, or are they taxing your recovery from
In fact,
the
if you
injury?
die, because there's insurance on death as well.
Yes.
If you die, you still have to pay the government a bit of tax.
Yes.
You know, taxing you to death. That's actually the way we can put in death, to death, and in death.
Yes.
You're still having to pay taxes. But now, Robin, I have a question for you here. How can we speak of can we still speak of the finance bill and its propositions and what it's supposed to do for Mwananchi? Because when you were beginning earlier on, you said, this is a way for the government to raise revenue, really. There's no other way. There has to be a finance bill for every single year, that will be presented, and the Treasury has to, see the allocations and how that's going to happen. Can we still speak of that while we haven't solved the issue of transparency and accountability?
Well, I like what the senator for the former governor and now the senator for Uasin Gishu. I still find that very amusing. But what Senator Jackson Mandago said, that in as much as we are speaking about the finance bill, it's time to think of when that money gets to the government. Are we sure that the people who are getting that money are going to use it for the right reasons? The last time I was here, I explained that the government can basically make money in three ways. The government can tax its people. The government can get grants and aids from international partners, and the government can actually enter into commercial agreements like loans and PPPs to do development works. Now, it depends on the government you have for the day and how they think of it. The government we have of the day thinks of talking to us about savings and being comfortable in where we are and looking at leading a quote-unquote simple life. But we've had governments that were ambitious. Uhuru's government was focusing on what they call big push investment. They focused on the commercial agreements on how we can create infrastructure that can earn us money with time to spend, with time to come. Kibaki's government was more of the visionary part of it, and looking at our structures and how we can balance what we earn, what we borrow, to make sure that even in 10 years we can still be able to pay out some of the debts while collecting some from Kenyans. And thinking of it in that sense, you get to understand that, okay, we now have a government that does not believe in entering into commercial agreements on maybe loans. They're saying we have too much loans and all, but they have already borrowed like 687 billion as we speak up to today. So with that trajectory, they will borrow as much as what was borrowed in the previous regime that they keep bashing. But even as we talk about that, you look at the taxes and the current status of our economy, that if you were to focus on getting it from Kenyans, are they in a position to do that? We have Kenyans who are hearing from unemployment from COVID. We have businesses that are on the decline, but we are celebrating killing them once they are down there, because I don't think I think for my side I would propose that maybe they would bring their budget a bit down and concede, okay, we have failed to manage what we have as Kenyans, as the Kenyan government, and we are having financial crisis, so we need to a bit regulate on how we are spending. But what we are seeing from them is they still want to manage that high budget, have 50 CASs, have foreign trips every now and then. You look left, you look right, it's something. Mudavadi is going here, who is doing what? These ones are having a conference by the government, these ones are doing, and much of it comes to, why are we doing this? At the end of the day, if you were to serve Kenyans, we would be talking about NHIF. You have not remitted NHIF money for 8 months, and then you talk of remitting 2 months arrears, not the 6 months and you want us to go back to that.
Not possible. Here, I have a list of members of parliament that the nation, this is courtesy of Nation, who reached out to, most of them, if not all, to get their position on the finance bill of 2023. And this is trying to see if there's any chance of this finance bill being battered down at least to a level where Mwananchi can get to agree with. But first, we have to remember that the Speaker of the National Assembly, who's Moses Wetangula, is an insider of the Kenya Kwanza government. So a man who's supposed to be independent and to be impartial in what he is going to do, that is as of Thursday, that's a bit tricky for me as a common Mwananchi to believe that it's possible for these members of parliament to listen to our voices at large. But looking at this as well, so far 61 members of parliament with their names here published by the Nation last week who are saying they're going to vote yes on the finance bill of 2023. 45 of them are saying no, and 46 have given no responses and are undecided. So if you look at yes versus no, it's 61 to 45, and there's a whole lot of 46 people who are yet to decide. Does this shine maybe a small light of hope for Kenyans that maybe some of these MPs by this Thursday will have heard at least the cry of common Mwananchi?
Being a Jubilee member, I have to kind of agree with what you're saying about the speaker. It's not out of disrespect or dishonor, but the man has not provided dignity to that office. I say that because just last week we had a battle in Parliament because one of our members, who I have taken to the disciplinary committee, decided that day we were supposed to do a judgment on whether she should be expelled from the party for being in the Kenya Kwanza side. But instead of fighting the battles about you are in Kenya Kwanza or Azimio, she was in Parliament fighting to remain as the deputy minority whip of the opposition. So and Moses Wetangula let that go. So
Moses Wetangula already scored an own goal with Sabina Chege. I think that's how I can put it.
So if coming from it from that angle, even if we were to have a conscience or a moment of reckoning from our members of parliament from the Kenya Kwanza side, he would not be surprised to see the speaker leading them to light, quote unquote, and showing them the way of voting yes. I will not be surprised if I see something of the sort. But be that as it may, we have to recognize some who are doing some great work. I have to recognize Gathoni Wabushoba, even when she comes from the other side, that she's actually taking that conversation to the people and asking from the people if should I vote yes or should I vote no. And that's what should be happening with every MP we have. But here in KU we have an MP from UDA, and I believe he's on that list as yes, and he has never spoken in parliament, so you can see where we are headed.
Right, definitely. Has your member of parliament actually asked you what your thoughts are on the finance bill of 2023? Do you even know who your member of parliament is? There's a list here, and I'm going to retweet it. It has a list of the members of parliament, what they're saying they are going to vote by Thursday. Next to them is their constituencies that they're representing, so you can check it, and this is going to be really useful information. Actually, there's a comment here already from one Mwangi ML saying for the first time we'll have a situation where voters will know how their MPs voted in parliament, and it's going to be a great step forward to holding elected leaders.
Actually, the president scored an odd goal by that when he said he wants to see also how every MP will vote on the finance bill. It also brought to the attention of Kenyans, okay, I also want to know how my MP will vote.
Right.
So if he votes for you or votes against
what your needs are. Like here on page this is page 5 of the Daily Nation. Pay slips to suffer as state raids workers. Workers are already grappling with prices of basic commodities going up. Also, contributions are upwards. NSSF, NHIF. The government has also finished gathering views on the proposals to the NHIF contribution from the current range of 150 and 1700 to a flat rate of 2.75% of gross salary. So if you're someone who gets a pay slip at the end of the month, these are how the deductions will be changing. In 2022, your pay was at 1,300 in 2023 with a proposal. It's going to change a bit to 1,095. NSSF from 200 to 1,080. NHIF from 900 back to 825, and that is for guys who are earning 30,000 gross pay. So this is the figure that the nation has decided to use as an example. So if you do that, 2.7% of the gross deduction of your gross salaries, that is the deduction, will be 900. If you're earning 100,000 NHIF, you're going to pay 2,750 per month. NSSF 1080, and payee, of course, there are going to be at 35%, and and more of that. So it seems there's guys who are people who are expecting a pay slip at the end of the month are going to suffer a bit more than guys who aren't. And this we noticed with the statements by the President William Ruto saying that wale majamaa wako na pay slip wanataka nyinyi ambao hamna pay slip msibenefit. Are we witnessing Kenya Kwanza, instead of using a bottom up approach, saying maybe let's now start a class war rather than going bottom up?
Maybe, but I want to start from the point where we need to tell Kenyans on how they are conditioned by government. We have had these cries over and over again about financial crises in point A, in point B, and it has been used as a justification, as an excuse to increase money on one side or on the other. Why I say that is because at once we had MPs having their salaries delayed, and they brought it out forward on how the government does not have money. So that was the conditioning for MPs to support a finance bill that taxes Kenyans, because government does not have money. Then we went from there, and we do not have remissions to NHIF, and hospitals started chasing people away.
Right.
And now from that, we start telling you the government has no money, and so it will have to regularize how you pay your NHIF, and we do not pay a standard rate, and we have to pay according to salaries and according to how much you pay, and nobody should be paying below this amount. Again, I come back to you being conditioned to accept that NHIF will go up. I bring the people back to a local question, a local scenario that they have been used to. Most of us have taken what is being called as hustler fund, albeit we did not take it to do business, because again, what they are giving you to do business, and they are not giving you any training to do business with that 1,500. If you ask them, they tell you if you take avocados of 400 from Kisii and we bring them to Nairobi, yes, you will make. And you'd ask them, how many people have you given that training of how they can sell avocados and where they will get the market for avocados?
Right. There's a lot to speak on the business environment, right?
But even in all this, the question becomes on how you're being conditioned to accept some other things. So from the hustler fund, everybody who has taken the hustler fund will tell you there's something that has been going to savings. And if you ask them today, where is that saving? We have had, they say they have already transacted over 3 billion with hustler fund. Right? With that 3 billion, if we take what they had been using for savings, that would come to around 300 million, if I'm not wrong. From that 300 million, where is it? Who is the custodian of that 300 million? Why are we getting increasement in the NSSF, and you can take that 300 million to NSSF because that was the intention of a savings fund? So you get where we are headed with this, that at one point you need to get to Kenyans and tell them, okay, something is not adding up. What you're being told, when you see some things happening, they're just happening so that you can accept what will come. Because Kenyans are being lied to today that the levy has been reduced from 3% to 1.5%, and it has not. You are still going to pay 1.5%. What they had done is they had included the employer, and the employer has threatened the government that they will sack you if they are forced to pay. And so they have told the employer, no, you don't pay. But what we tell Kenyans is we tell them we have reduced, we have come down. They wanted us to come down, we have come down. We have come down from digital content creators paying 15% to 5%. But if you're exporting anything, you have to do a double of that. And we are saying we created a ministry so that we can export much of our products to the outside world. How?
Now, Robin,
Yes.
a normal mwananchi who's a diehard fan of the Kenya Kwanza government, taking a look at this, they'll be like, these are, suited men up on TV speaking about the digital content tax, kizungu mingi, export tax, housing levy and all of that. Mi ni mwananchi wa kawaida, nilipatiwa 3,000, hustler fund, au majamaa watataxiwa, tuwekewe kwa savings, and I think that the bottom up is actually going to work. I don't have a pay slip, I don't have to worry about NSSF, I don't have to worry about pay and all these other deduction. How do we tell that mwananchi that this finance bill still is hurting them to the core?
So I will start. I will start where I began. That we have been implementing a project under the IRI to have the views or to do surveys on young people on what they think about business, what they think about the laws on business, and how they could be suited to help them. The realization was that most youth businesses fall within the first 3 years. And so we started asking ourselves, what could be wrong? Why is it that they don't go past 3 years? Why is it that we don't have these young businesses that we can say are an earmark of what has happened? And that conversation led us to Kenyans, or rather I would say Nairobians, and understanding their whole view of how they take government wanting to take money from them. That you need to explain to them exactly where they come in on this finance bill. When you tell them watu wa helicopter wametolewa, you tell them that to incite them and to make them fight watu wa helicopter. When you tell them the middle class are the ones who didn't vote and they are the ones now who are going to finance those houses for the young people, what you're creating is that mindset of the middle class versus the social class, and so that you can contribute to that chain of bottom tenor up. I have always fought against it. So for that Kenya Kwanza guy who is sitting there and believes this government has good things for Kenyans and it is planning to do to help Kenyans in the long run, I tell you this, brace yourself. We are just at the finance bill. After the finance bill, we will go to divide this money. We will go to share revenue with county. We will get now to the appropriations bill, where we say where money will be going, which projects will be doing. And you will remember that there were so many projects that were halted as we await for money. So when we get to that point and you see that we do not have Mau roads, when we get to that point and we see that we the bridges that were being done over seasonal rivers are not being built anymore, you will remember that we had just begun.
Right.
Yes.
Think about it, because the government also does open the floor for you to give in your participation, public participation on a number of these bills, including this finance bill, the NHIF contributions and whatnot. And you can be checking the gazettement of some of those. Let me just quickly say some that are still open for you to send in your your feedback. The privatization bill as well, seeking to privatize a few of those loss-making companies in the Republic and parastatals, the Food and Feed Safety Control Coordination Bill, the Conflict of Interest Bill, the Regional Development Authorities Bill. These are some of those important bills you should be taking a look at, so that you're also keeping in check the Kenya Kwanza government. We might be concentrating so much on the finance bill of 2023, and so many things could be happening in the background. It's important that we are also, very keen on the distractions that are currently happening.
There's one thing that people haven't noticed. In about, before we get to December, Kenya will host the African Climate Action Summit here in Kenya. Kenya will host the African Youth Connect Summit here in Kenya. And most of the things that are being talked about are climate. As we are talking about that, when everyone, they know the president is the patron for climate change, we have changed the Climate Change Act to include something called carbon markets. Carbon markets are ways that countries are making money from environmental programs, but that will not be told to you. So that the law has changed. And in fact, the review and the public participation for the climate change review was done last month. So they're already changing that and introducing carbon markets to Kenya. They are going to make money from that. But do you Kenyans know about it?
No.
Counties are being given something called FLOCA, funds for local programs on environment. They are receiving those grants. Are they telling you about it? Is there any social project that you're doing around environment that could benefit from FLOCA? But they will not tell you about that. So I get where you're coming from by saying we should focus on some of the things that are being asked for public participation. But it is true that we also have to be very keen on what the government is not telling you.
Okay.
So most of the time they tell you so much, but focus on what
they are also
not telling
not telling you. That's a very important way to. That's a very nice way actually to put that important point there. Focus also on what they are not telling you. But the Deputy President here on page 6 is also telling us something. There has been an exchange of words, though silently, between the Deputy President, and the illegitimate office of the Prime CS. That is CS Mudavadi. It's unconstitutional. Yes. I have to say it as it is, right? So there seems to be a pointing of fingers from the Deputy President to CS Mudavadi that, some of the trips, including the one he made to Nigeria, are not beneficial for the government. And earlier on, you'd mentioned some foreign trips, that the government seems to be taking and spending a lot of money on. Speaking during a media interview last week on Friday, the DP here is quoted to say that, let me tell you, the only foreign trip I will attend is that which will bring development, because I don't have interest in attending swearing-in ceremonies. I have told the president to let me address the issue of alcohol and bang among the youth. However, there is a rebuttal here from Women Representative Beatrice Adagala, who's saying it's not necessary for you to return with a chest full of gold from a foreign trip like a pirate.
Nice one. But
is the DP right for the first time? I've seen so many statements from DP Gachagua. Is this one of the right statements to tame foreign relation trips?
Okay, I will say that one is quite political. In fact, the same thing of focusing on what they are not saying is what I can apply here. Okay. That you guys are seeing him talking about going to a foreign trip to come back with goodies. The president has been saying he's been doing that. He was in Djibouti the other day. He says they've signed visa-free and trade. He's been doing those trips.
He's coming back with a chest full of gold.
Yes, but we have a battle that is going on in Mount Kenya. And that battle, when the deputy president was talking about he's not interested in those foreign trips, is because the foreign trips that have been quoted so much or have been highlighted so much are ones involving our party leader, the former president Uhuru Kenyatta. He was in Nigeria. He was in the one for DRC. He gave speeches from all that. And even at that point, the DP was wooing former MPs from Jubilee to the Kenya Kwanza side. When he was doing that, they came in, they said how they saw Uhuru walking on the streets with young people and how that was very embarrassing to see. And then once he made an appearance in the international scene, then they were like, this is the Uhuru Kenyatta we know. And it was very intimidating to Rigathi Gachagua as his. And he started calling even for meetings with all MCAs from Mount Kenya. He has been doing that. He hasn't been saying that's what he's doing, but that's what he's doing. And in every time we highlight what the former president is doing outside, the current president sends Mudavadi to those trips, and people asking that is how lowly he thinks of Rigathi. He can't send him to such. Rigathi would go there and start fighting Uhuru just in front of guests.
It's Nigeria.
And it is Nigeria. You see these people, let me tell you that I am an honest man. I am married to one wife. I don't drink. And we have gone back now to profiling of young people. That's all I had from that. Because when he says, now leave me to deal with the issue of alcohol and bang among the youth of Mount Kenya, is what they have branded the young people of Mount Kenya as we speak. Personally, I am a victim of being profiled. not knowing who I was. I have been taken even to court. I have been arrested because they believe you're a young person. You just look like, if I'm not wearing a suit, I just look like alcohol and bang to them. And those things are bad, and those things are the ones that are making us not have jobs. I wonder how, because in fact, they are the ones employing you for engaging in such. But that conversation is a conversation that can be escalated to a different level. But the issue you see between Mudavadi and Rigathi is just a matter of succession, and it will come to pass. We have already seen it. We know it is coming. Once in a few years, you will hear Rigathi talking of how illegitimate that office is and how unconstitutional it is, and we will support him because we will say, yes, you are talking the truth. You are an honest man. And they were in the same government forming that, making the deal to
decision,
to have a prime CS. Yes.
All right. So maybe also again, as Robin keeps saying, also listen to what they are not telling you. As you read the dailies, as you see the headlines, also think about what is happening behind the scene, something that you might not be aware of. So that is what is there in the Finance Bill of 2023. By Thursday, we'll be getting the full deliberations and also a presentation to the Kenyans for the 2023-2024 budget. And brace yourselves. Robin keeps saying, brace yourselves. Tough times are just beginning. Tough times are lasting. On page, if we move to page 8 of the Daily Nation, we see the issue of Shakahola. So the state wants those who are rescued from the Shakahola forest to be moved from a rescue center to Shimo La Tewa Maximum Prison, where they will be forced to eat. This comes after it emerged that 65 victims who are rescued from the forest are starving themselves still. After they were rescued, they were taken for treatment before they are being transferred to a rescue center in Kilifi. Someone was insinuating that maybe we are seeing this, rise of extremism in religion because of the dire situation in the Republic. It is easy for you to convince someone who's been battered down by the cost of living to follow Jesus to death, to starve themselves to death for a better future. Can we still point our fingers back to the cost of living and the current situation of the economy for this very situation? The Shakahola massacre, which I will call it a massacre because it's a death, the death as of yesterday, 285 people. That's a number which is shocking even all across the world. Can we say the economic situation in the Republic is so dire that people now need to meet Jesus?
Okay, I will not say that per se, but I will look it in a point of view from the political economy side. That yes, we have prevailing circumstances that make us so gullible for things that selling hope. You see, they say that religion is the opium of the poor. If you go to a slum right now, you will find more churches than you will find M-Pesa shops in those areas.
There's more faith than money.
Yes, but that's not what I want to get to, because what I want to focus on is what made us get to that position. That if we used our political aspirations using religion, then it is quite easy for anyone to manipulate that religion. I have always insisted on having that separation between state and religion. And if you had the SUPKEM leaders talking in Parliament yesterday, they were saying that they are aware that the Constitution is quite clear that there shall be no state religion, and religion should be let to be free. But even in doing that, we find out that we came from an angle of, we just had an election where religion was the most played part of the campaign season. 90% of the campaign that were done in the previous elections were done in the pulpit. And by doing so, and by engaging religious formations in our campaign, it means that our voter population or our civic population is much aligned to the religion. I will say this because I had an argument with someone who I respect very much, but we differed on this because I did not subscribe to the logic that, when someone becomes president, it is God who has given him that leadership, and we need to respect that, and we need to accept whatever he has for us, and he will live his legacy on that. I said no. I said you cannot, you people, there was nowhere people are campaigning to God. That is where we went wrong. When we were campaigning, we looked like we were campaigning to God and not campaigning to people. And yet it is the people who came to vote.
Right.
If it was a matter of God, we would just go to church and we would we let God say, I have appointed this one. Why did they have to campaign? But they used that opportunity to fix your campaign to God. That at this point, anything you want to sell to someone, you have to quote God. You have to quote the Bible. You would see even Gathoni Wamashoba in her dissent of the finance bill. She still has to quote Bible so that it goes along with what the people have been hearing and what they have been sort of conditioned to. And that is the angle that I stand with, even in that Shakahola debacle in itself. That what it has produced is that what you're doing by engaging us in Thanksgiving and services every Sunday and taking us around as a president means that as a country, the one thing that we keep listening to is religious rhetoric. And that means anybody with an other agenda can easily use that religious rhetoric to take advantage of whatever we are going through.
Right.
You have already raised everything for us. You tell us unga ni 150 supermarket, we can't find that unga. And here is a person who says, Jesus said, man shall not live on bread alone. We follow that man.
And we get Jesus and will get us more than that bread.
Yes.
So that is what you can read on page 8 of the Daily Nation. That is the state wanting the Shakahola victims moved to prison and force-fed, but we are taking a look at it from the side of politics and how this has decided to crop up in the recent events. Now, but the story that is there on the Daily Nation, maybe just we can touch on it lightly. What do you think should happen to these victims? They're saying some of those rescued, and they're in these rescue centers, they're refusing to eat, and they're scaring the other survivors who are very willing to have these meals, and they want to take them to prison and be force-fed there. As an analyst in this kind of matters, how would you advise the state to approach this? Are these victims? Are we treating them as accomplices or taking part in whatever it is that the pastor is accused of?
Okay, it's quite a balancing task, because on one side, these people have their freedom of conscience and belief. You cannot propagate or force them to have a certain belief. But on the other side, they have the right to food. The state has an obligation towards them to ensure food security for them and ensure that they live well. If you were to try and commit suicide today and you fail, you will be arraigned in court for attempted suicide.
They're actually being arraigned for attempted suicide. This one.
And you will be jailed for that. The point being that your death, if you want to leave the earth, leave the earth, the terms of God. You can't leave us to suffer here alone. We have to suffer together. But that's that being said, I think the government has to really focus on reimagining the story for our victims. In as much as some are scaring and some have already been indoctrinated, we are faced in June is actually the men's mental health
awareness month, right?
Yes, so we are actually in a state where talking of the issues of mental health should be utmost to all of us. That understanding people need to be self-aware of themselves. People need to have a sense of belonging in whatever they do, and understanding what stresses that people go through in a day would help us to get, because we can say maybe it is economic or lack of food that made people go, but we have had stories of people who are well off, who had jobs, who had good things, and they dropped them all to go there. And focusing on more on what is it that could be on your mental state. If you have been used to being lied to every now and then, and you get to a point and you find out all this was a lie, even with your biggest wealth in life, you might find that the life is not worth living for if you have been living a lie in your whole life. So I think the government should really focus on the mental health state of our victims. In as much as they want to force them to eat, you can take each one of them through rigorous psychological tests to find out exactly what is ailing this man, because you will find that the gullible thing, that the vulnerability that was used by this religious thing is something small. Your parent died. Once they gave birth to you, you had a wife, she got a baby and passed on, so you are cast in your family. Once you give birth, you have to die, and that person has something that he's carrying over their shoulder that is beyond what you see on the screen. And that's what I would advise the government to go by. But seeing that we have this kind of government, I am not sure my advice would be hard.
I won't say a word. I won't say a word after this kind of government. But rehabilitation, that's what Robin is currently advising for these victims. It also speaks to a level of desperation, even if a section of them don't portray that level of desperation financially. There are many things that are happening behind the screen, as Wakili Robin is saying there. So that's our story. You can get to read more of. Maybe finally to take a look at a final piece of story that is of interest for us here on the Daily Nation. If you have it, you can flip to page 10, where DPP Haji, Nordin Haji, who's being, isn't Nordin Haji supposed to be the next NIS general? Director of Public
Welcome to Kenya Kwanza.
Prosecution. Nordin Haji actually has he had this award withdrawn from him. I'm going to get the name of that award, because they gave it to him a year or two ago, and then later they realized this guy is just withdrawing cases left, right, and center in Kenya. There's no way he's bipartisan in any of his dealings. But now the Director of Public Prosecution here is said to be thinking, or he has actually applied to withdraw charges against former Permanent Secretary Lillian Mbogo Omolo over an alleged loss of 468 million at the National Youth Service. And we're taking a look at the numbers. The value of all the halted cases have hit 10 billion Kenyan shillings, Robin, as Haji seeks to end this one, the XPS trial. So far, since he started dropping cases as of the Kenya Kwanza government coming in, they are going to hit 10 billion. Why hasn't Kenya been able to deal with graft despite knowing its effect? Are we glorifying corruption?
As a youth, I would say this is a very sad day. As a young person, before even I get to my legal standing or my legal status, as a young person, I am a very disappointed person. We had a memorandum in Parliament, in the last Parliament, against Lillian Mbogo. She was the PS for Youth Affairs. That's how she was in charge of things like NYS. And once we uncovered a scandal within the Ministry of Youth Affairs, she was suspended as investigations were being taken over. And by and large, we went forward and she was charged in court. And we get to a point where we have now a new government, and you siding with that government means you get one wash, you are cleaned, you are sanitized, you go to Kenya Kwanza today and you become the saint of all saints, and they pray for you and Jesus forgives you all your sin and you become a new being. You are written in the book of life. So how that is what has been happening. So once we get to that point, all our leaders have been aligning with this government just so that things can be washed away. That started with once we had Rigathi Gachagua become the deputy president of this country, because we still hold very much restriction or concerns with the case he had about the 2 billion that had been frozen. But once he goes to parliament, he gets into government, his case is the first one to be dropped. All his allies, the cases have been dropped. And then we get to a point where the DPP starts contradicting himself and says he wasn't the one behind charging them, he was being influenced to charge them. So an admission that he was being influenced to charge them could be an admission also. Again, as I said, listening to what they are not telling you is an admission that he can be influenced to drop them also. If you can be influenced to start a case, you can be influenced to drop it. And that is what we have been seeing. Now, he started once he started going with the tune of the current government, they have now tried to bring him back to the National Intelligence Service, where he was in the beginning, where he was picked from, and he is now doing some clearing and forwarding before he leaves the DPP work, because we are not sure if the next DPP will sing to the tune of the government, or he will just be another Maraga in the making. But what I am trying to show you is that the DPP is quite an compromised office from what he's saying. The DPP before him was made a cabinet secretary to come out of the DPP office. So the people are using that DPP office, in as much as it should be independent, as a very political tool. We cannot have faith in that office if the people who get from that office only go from one job to another. We cannot have people who retire. We do not have a DPP who has retired.
They move into active politics or government.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And in doing that, you don't build the confidence of people in that office. So I will stand here and say with all authority that our office of the Director of Public Prosecution does not build any trust in Kenyans.
Robin, you can correct me on this one, but I feel like then we need to have someone responsible for what is happening. If we have so many cases being dropped due to a lack of sufficient evidence, either whoever is prosecuting them needs to answer why there's lack of sufficient evidence, but also the National Police Service, which is supposed to get this evidence. So someone really definitely is sleeping on their job.
Not someone. So many people are sleeping on their jobs because there's need to understand that, okay, we have two ways of getting to this. We have a commission, an Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, that does investigation on their own motion. That they can look into something and try to figure out if there have been any misdoings or corruption cases in a particular institution. We also have a mechanism where we can report a complaint against a specific person, and the National Police Service will take up the duty of investigation, arresting any culprits, forwarding the same to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, who will now charge the accused person, prove his guilt in court, where the court now says, now you have a case to answer, and now it gets to what they say are the reasons people get out. Now our defense lawyers. As a defense lawyer, my job will only come after all those things have done. My job has to see through either the EACC or through the DCI. It has to go through the DPP's office. It also has to go through a court which will say that my client has a case to answer. Those things have to happen before I can even start and say it is because of my brilliance that this person is out of court. But what we are seeing currently is that we are not even being let to get to that point. The biggest point of departure comes from the court side and the DPP side, and then we get to them and ask them what is happening, and they all turn back and say the police and the EACC are doing shoddy work. So we only get to pointing fingers from this side to this side. I like what my senior Grand Mullah did a week ago. He had written a good thesis on how the CJ is one of the most incompetent chief justices we've ever had, and he got some bashing from it, but from it he got to learn of people not being tolerant in this government, and more of what is happening. What we are seeing going forward is signs of dictatorship, and I'm really hoping that we don't get there.
Signs of dictatorship. We'll have that conversation another time here on Tuesday, pointing out at some of the exact things that we can notice. Let me just read that statement issued by the Transparency International Kenya Executive Director Sheila Masinde when they were stripping DPP Nordin Haji of his 2019 Leadership Integrity Award. Transparency International Kenya has made the decision to withdraw the Leadership Integrity Award. It's funny when I read that because, the DPP has been withdrawing cases. So, in the spirit.
It's a withdrawing symptom.
It's a withdrawing symptom that's hitting everywhere. So, in the spirit of withdrawing cases, the Transparency International Kenya has withdrawn the Leadership Integrity Award conferred upon DPP Haji in 2019. They're saying that they have received petitions which have raised serious allegations regarding the withdrawal of high-profile corruption cases, including those who have been previously recognized, resulting in the loss of public funds. It speaks a lot to a nation when the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, is stripped of a leadership award by an integrity firm.
But you have to understand that he was given that award based on his fight against these big fishes. So when you start withdrawing the cases about on the big fishes, why do you deserve the award?
Right.
We were giving you for that. It's like saying you give a person an award for planting trees and then he goes and cuts them. You withdraw your award. I truly support what TI
you're given an environmental award for making a forest and then you come cut it down.
Yes.
You have to take back our award.
Yes.
But what does it say for the government, which is now endorsing him for an NIS position?
What he says is that he was doing the bidding for them. Exactly what that means. That the sons of Yusuf Haji, may his soul rest in peace, are disappointing him from wherever he is. One of them has become a puppet of the government. The other one is moving from his party and trying to take his party back to the government. And it's a bad sign. It's what I've said, signs of dictatorship falling, that we will soon find ourselves in a one-party state where if you criticize the government or the president of the day, you might find yourself in some big trouble. We have good resources like our digital content. We are very internet enabled and we can fight this. We have resources that we can use, especially as young people, to fight for what we believe in. But it is very telling of what kind of a government we are going to be having for the next couple of years, because at the rate where we are heading, we can't say we have a stable government. What I tell you with that is, just the other day we were fighting with the police for how they were handling demonstrations. Today, as we speak, the IG and the National Police Service Commission, which he sits on, are not speaking from the same mouth. They are fighting over who should be promoted and who should promote people and who should appoint people and who is the authority over the other. That is what we are having in the cabinet. We are having a fight between the deputy president and the illegitimate prime CS. In parliament, we are having a fight over Jubilee Party, over members of ODM moving to this side, over members within UDA criticizing the government, others being asked to resign as officials in the party for taking different stands. That is what we are seeing in the country at the moment. They may not highlight it as I have done. Maybe I am a bit biased. Sorry for that. That's all I can say. But they may not highlight it as it is. But that's what we are in. That's where we are as a country.
A very unstable state.
Yes.
There, and it's worrying for investors. This being a business show, I have to say it. For investors who are seeking to invest within the republic, a very unstable situation and political tension is worrying. As you've seen with KQ, they currently can't be able, as they've not been able to secure an investor because they have so much debt. They have so much debt, and the huge percentage of ownership of KQ is the government. This is scaring investors who might want a stake in this. If you can get to read this on page 1 of the Business Daily, 187 billion of debt, which is now making investors to shy away from investing in KQ. This uneasiness of the heavy debt is costing us. The government ownership at KQ is 48%, and then the others, KQ Lenders Company, KLM, and other shares which are traded at NSE. But 48%, a majority of it being the government, and all potential investors who spoke here agreed that the fundamentals of this KQ are not attractive for them to place in their money. So this kind of political instability is not very helpful for our business environment.
Again, you noted an advert before on a public participation and a submission for memoranda call. And what was it about?
There was a privatization bill.
Right. Now, at the time where we are getting stories of KQ falling, Mumias falling, and now you understand that there's a privatization bill and the government wants to do privatization of some companies, and there are some people who are vocal about company A, you cannot sell A, or if you are selling company A, you have to sell to me. We will have this conversation in a year or two, and you will remember this day. Yeah.
And foreign investors are not getting a chance. So,
Yes.
think about it. We can't break down everything for you. Just finally to finish up before I get your last remark, Robin, there. Thank you so much, by the way, for having this conversation with me.
Thank you.
It's been a very important discussion. If there's anything I've left, you will do it on your final remark. Let me do mine here on the newspaper review section from a quote by Diana Gishengo appearing in a media discussion recently, saying corruption is a culture issue. It is so deeply entrenched that political aspirants plan for corruption and that voters enable it by asking them for money. Tupe za macho and mheshimiwa umetuletea nini? Think about it.
I will finish by saying it was Nelson Mandela